With the current state of the world and prices on everything just being blown way out of proportion, it may seem as it's, impossible to go pick up a new fun project car for a decent price anymore. It just seems that all of our favorite cars are either just like out of reach in price nowadays, and it's kind of sad. However, just like me and gym class, there are some cars that got picked last for the most recent price hikes, or, just left out in general. Which brings us to today's video, because believe it or not, there are still plenty of good cars out there to choose from that are still coming in below that $5,000 mark, ready for you to scoop up and start making your own, and of course having some fun along the way. But before we go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of everything, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Helps us out a ton. We really appreciate it. We're trying to get to 1 million subscribers this year, and we're really close. So any additional would help. Anyway, now, I know every time we do one of these videos, the comment section gets absolutely slaughtered with, "You forgot my favorite car of all time! How dare you!" And usually, it's because we limit the list to like 5 cars or something like that, and we go into a little more detail on each one of them. But let's be real, if you're watching this video, you probably know quite a bit about the same 5 typical cars that would normally make the list. So what I decided to do today is break the video down into a few different sections, such as, European, JDM, USDM, and even KDM, so we can cover as many cars as possible. And listen, I know that I'm still going to miss certain cars and not mention some. And then listen, I'm sorry, all right? But there's, how much more info on Honda Civics and Miatas do you want? So let's start with European cars that are under $5,000 right now. The Volvo S60 is one of those cars that always just seems to fly under the radar. However, the first generation of the S60 that runs from 2001 to 2009 can be picked up for a pretty good bargain right now. With the option of a 5-cylinder, yes, 5-cylinder turbocharged engine, these cars can be quite a bit of a sleeper. The only downside, however, is that parts aren't going to be the cheapest, and sourcing them can be a bit of a pain in the butt. If you're talking about European cars under $5,000 with good tuning potential, you can't leave out the Mark IV generation of Volkswagens. The Jettas and the GTIs of this generation have become a staple to the car scene and somehow continue to just remain affordable. Whether it's because they all have been, through 50 owners and 20 different engines, it is what it is. The fact still remains that they're affordable. The 1.8-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine provides a fun starting platform for someone looking to modify a car. Even though they might not be the most reliable platform on the planet, no one really seems to, care. They all are they're fun. And since there's so many of them, parts are pretty accessible. To close out the European section, we got to throw some BMWs in the mix. We got to do it. Specifically, the E36 and E46 generation of the 3 Series cars. You can scoop up these cars for insanely cheap, and they just take an absolute beating. Back in the day, I had a 95 E36, got it for about $900, had about 220,000 miles on it, had it for about 5 years and daily drove it. Now, I had a ton of fun with the car. Did I have to roll it downhill to pop start it every now and then? Absolutely, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Except in the wintertime. Winter and pop starting vehicles kind of weird. But while it wasn't the prettiest, car out there and I had to do all that, I had a blast with it. With options of either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive options and automatic or manual transmissions, there's really something for everyone within those cars. And they're not too, they're not too bad. They're pretty fun. All right, now to the part that I would say a majority of you guys and gals came to this video to watch, specifically, that's right, the Japanese cars. Starting off the list, will Honda Civics still rule the world when it comes to an affordable, fun, and easy modifiable car? There's another Honda that takes a lot of those same qualities but just throws it into a different chassis. The Honda Prelude regularly gets shadowed by Honda's flagship cars, but still remains, in at least my opinion, a great looking fun car. I honestly consider it to be the front wheel drive S2000. Available with VTEC and most of them coming with a 5-lug bolt pattern, the Prelude is another great Honda platform to keep in mind when looking for a fun new project. Remember when Mitsubishi used to make neat cars? Well, Fitment Industries remembers, and the Mitsubishi Eclipse dominated the 90s and early 2000s, specifically with the 2nd generation Mitsubishi Eclipse, especially the GST and GSX models. Now, while those are a little bit out of the price range for this list, unfortunately, it still leaves all the other models up for grabs. Models like the RS and the GS are the base model versions of the Mitsubishi Eclipse of the 2nd generation, sporting, of course, the Chrysler 428 engine, are still great project cars to tinker with. Not to mention the 3rd generation Eclipses from the early 2000s, even though less favored due to their body style, still have a good amount to offer as well, and have a pretty underrated V6 engine. We all know the Subaru WRX, and even though the WRXs in remotely considerable shape are going for over 5K, the Legacy 2.5 have been pretty much left alone. It's almost like the more mature WRX. This one, has like a 401k setup and budgets how much they, go out to eat per month. They're still fantastic cars and can be modified extremely well. However, remember, it's still Subaru. What makes Subaru is still a Subaru. Want something a little bit different? Maybe something people have always, judged you for after you pick it up? Well, how about a rotary car? There's nothing better than that. Mazda RX8 and even the naturally aspirated FD Rx7s are going for insanely cheap right now. Even more so if the seller thinks that the engine is shot, which in more cases than not, the engine is just flooded or the spark plugs or coils need to be replaced. If you wanted to get into a rotary car but don't want to fork out 50K for an FD right now, these are great places to start. And when, not if, the seals go out, you can either learn to rebuild for not too badly priced, or you're not losing on a ton of money, you're only losing on 5K. Honestly though, I think these cars are really fun and something really different to mess around with. Hopping on over to the old US of A, we got a decent list here as well, all right? Now, coming over to the USDM side of things, you'd probably expect it to be littered with, big rear-wheel drive V8s. Well, surprise, surprise, that's not really the case. The first car on the list is actually 3 cars, well, almost 4 if you count one of the other ones. And they are the furthest thing from that if possible. The Chevy Cobalt SS, the Neon SRT4, and the Saturn Ion Redline. Yes, a Saturn Ion. All of these featuring some sort of forced induction, either in the form of a turbocharger or supercharger. These cars directly competed with the JDM counterparts of the time, and honestly, they did a pretty dang good job. The SRT4 engine found its way not only in the bays of the Dodge Neon, but even the PT Cruiser and the PT GT. The LNF engine that the Cobalt SSs had were able to take an absolute beating and even shared the supercharged variant, the LSJ, with the Saturn Ion Redline. I figured it would be fair to rope all of these cars together into one segment, since they do a lot of the same things and they're kind of similar and they all fall under the same price point. If you're looking for some USDM with a decent tuning potential, I would recommend starting there. Now we had to get at least one V8 in the list here, and that of course has to be the new Edge Ford Mustang. They're not going to be the greatest interiors, but I consider these cars to be the next Fox body of the Mustang cars. I mean, the Fox body's increasing in price. The new Edge Mustangs are really kind of next in line to follow suit. A lot of people are picking them up for relatively cheap. They're bulletproof engines. They sound decent. They got a good amount of performance behind them, and honestly, you can pick them up for pretty dang cheap. So if you want a rear-wheel drive V8 American muscle car, you can go find yourself a new Edge Mustang. Now the next car on the list is technically USDM because it was made in counterpart with Mitsubishi, of course, the Dodge Stealth, the American 3000 GT. Now if we're talking about the base model, like the SL version with the NAV6, it's still a great car to pick up. Now I know a lot of people aren't a fan of like the winglets on the back of them, but they're still a fantastic chassis. They still produce a decent amount of power. And honestly, I think they aged pretty well. Like I said, the wing, a little bit odd, but you can take that off, you can have someone shave it down, and it fixes a lot of the things. But if you want a 3000 GT but want to pay 3000 GT prices, you can go find yourself a Dodge Stealth, and it's practically the same thing. It might have racing stripes, and that is kind of a downside, but that's a trade-off, I guess. Now, we can't forget about you KDM guys and gals out there. However, when I was making this list and going through cars and racking my brain, I'm like, what, cars are from Korea that are under $5,000 that would make the cut? There isn't a whole lot. A lot of your Genesis and stuff are above that now. However, when you look at the 88 to 98 Hyundai Sonata, they got a 4G63 under the hood. Not a lot of people know that. Now, this isn't just some variant detuned version of the 4G63. It is a 4G63. It's just minus the turbocharger. So a lot of people go and pick up these cars because of those engines specifically. And if they're swapping a turbo into it or just swapping a 4G63T from like a GSX or something into it, it is kind of vice versa. But you can get yourself a pretty decent sleeper car for really, really cheap because a lot of people don't know what lies under the hood. There's like, oh, it's just a, it's just a 4-cylinder engine and it's a Hyundai, so I don't know. But it's a 4G63, and the 4G63 is a pretty cool engine, so if you want a decent sleeper Hyundai that you can build to maybe something a little cool, go check out those Sonatas, they're pretty neat. So here you have a decent list of some cars that are still under $5,000 that haven't been affected too bad by the recent price hike. You can still go get a decent car for a decent amount of money and still have some, of course, cash to throw at it to start modifying, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So let us know down in the comments below if there's something that you think we completely missed. Like I said, of course, there's gonna be your Miatas, there's gonna be your Honda Civics, there's gonna be all those cars that get mentioned in every video. I wanted to throw a couple others out there that maybe don't get talked about as much, but go ahead and drop down what car you are choosing down in the comments below. And of course, if you need some wheels, tires, suspension, or even some performance parts, you can stop on over to fitmentindustries.com. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Gels. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.